Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer.
And today we're going to talk about Valentine's Day because Monday is Valentine's Day. So if you are not aware that Monday is Valentine's Day and you need to buy some candy or something, you got
now,
the weekend.
you know.
Yeah, you've got the weekend to take care of that. So we're looking for books with a strong Valentine's Day theme. And I know that this can sort of be a polarizing holiday in some circles. Do either of you have strong feelings about Valentine's Day one way or the other?
Well, I grew up in Australia where Valentine's Day wasn't really that big a deal when I was growing up. Like, I was thinking about this. I don't remember my parents ever really doing anything for Valentine's Day. And it just wasn't a massive deal. And I think for me, it wasn't until I met my husband that Valentine's Day became more interesting and special and important, if that makes sense. Yeah. And in some ways, it's another very commercialized holiday. And the one weekend you don't want to get married is on Valentine's weekend because your flowers will cost you a bomb.
True.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah. Everything goes up in price. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents never really celebrated it either. The only thing I remember from being a kid was that every child in school brought a Valentine for everybody else in their class. Mm-hmm. And you weren't allowed to pick favorites for sure. And I have, I should have got them out for this episode. I have Valentines from my parents' childhood as well. So they exchanged Valentines in school as well. And my parents were born in 1922, so mm-hmm. Happy 100 in heaven.
Yeah.
But so that's more. It was more of a children's holiday, and we still don't really celebrate it that much. I mean, we might go out for dinner, but we probably won't because the restaurants are full, and we don't think in advance, like to make a reservation or something.
Right.
So is it normal in the schools? You're talking about like elementary age?
Elementary, yeah.
That was not my childhood at all.
Well,
no, interesting.
This is mine. I'm older than you and live in Canada.
It's interesting.
I mean, I'm Narelle's age, and in our elementary school, you would bring in a shoebox the week of Valentine's
Day,
and that you cut a little slit in it, and you'd have one day where they'd have all the construction paper out and stuff, and you would glue hearts on it or whatever so that everybody had their own little mailbox for Valentine's Day. And then on Valentine's Day, you put your Valentine in everybody's mailbox, and you brought one for everybody. And they were always like, I love to get the Garfield ones so that you could, and it's because Garfield was already around. He's not new. I loved Garfield, or I'd get the Transformers ones, and they had, little cheesy jokes. Very cheesy little jokes on them, and you spend all night the night before signing them all so that you could plunk them in people's boxes.
That's so different. Yeah. And I suppose you're in winter for Valentine's Day. We're in summer.
We definitely
usually
are,
yeah. So it's totally different. So if my husband and I were doing something for the Valentines, it would be something summery outdoors.
Sure.
We're in daylight savings. Yeah. It's that type of thing. So it's just culturally different in many ways. But I would say, I mean, maybe these days, probably if you looked at schools in Australia, there probably would be more stuff happening with Valentine's in the same way that there's stuff happening with Halloween and all those things are probably bigger. But I still think Book Week's probably the biggest week in terms of dress up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say I was surprised. The first trip we took to Ireland, my husband and I, we were there over Valentine's Day. And I just sort of assumed that it would be I think of Valentine's Day as a more American holiday. I don't necessarily think of it as being an international, holiday that people care about. But we were in Dublin and it was insane.
Really?
On Valentine's Day, they had little pop-up shops with like teddy bears holding hearts, just like where it was the flower vendors were all out. It was raining icy cold rain, but they were out there making sure that you didn't go home without having gotten flowers or a teddy bear or chocolate to take home with you. So I was sort of surprised. And that night was funny because we were just sort of flying by the seat of our pants on our trip. And so we, it's not like we had a house where we could go cook dinner. So we had to go out. And so we got there to this restaurant and they're like, do you have a reservation? And we're like, of course not, because we didn't realize that it was Valentine's Day at all. So they're like, well, do you think you can be done in 2 hours? And it's like, yes, that's no problem. We do not take 2 hours to eat a meal. I promise you.
If
So
you can get the food to us in less than an hour and a half, we're good.
Yes.
Because we were really early still, but they're like, because we need the table at 8, but we can get you in now if you're really wanting to eat now and can be done before. It was like, yes, that'll be great. No problem.
Love it.
Yeah. So culture clash that you just did not think about at all before you got on the airplane. Wow, that was a little side trip that we took. Oh well. So if you're going to classify a book as a Valentine's Day read or a book with a Valentine's Day theme, what does that have to have? Is there something specific that you think of that you need, Valerie?
I think that one of the characters, possibly two, but definitely one, have to really think of Valentine's Day as a big deal. They have to either like really, really, really love it or really, really, really like shun it. It can't be just a story that goes along in winter or summer if it's Australian, and they, a bunch of people went to the beach on the 14th of February and they carry on. That's not a Valentine's book. It has to have some special, and most of them seem to have like a Valentine's event, whether it's a party or a ball or a fundraiser or a something, so that it's focused on all the love, hearts, flowers, romance stuff.
Agree. Narelle?
Yep, I completely agree. And I think it's fun if one of the main characters just does not like Valentine's Day or doesn't believe in love. I think they're probably the elements I'd look for in those types of stories as well.
I like it. All right. Then let's dive into books and we'll talk about our Valentine's Day books. Narelle, you want to go first?
I will go first. So I went and did some rereading, as I do.
Yeah.
And the book that I read this ages ago, the book that I reread was Operation Valentine by Elizabeth Maddrey, which is a really fun story. Yes. So I really enjoyed rereading that. So this one is a reunion romance, and I am a big fan of reunion romances. So that tick that box before we even start. And Annabelle has wealthy parents and a trust fund, but she's very much wanting to be independent because her parents will use money to control her life in a lot of respects. So she's, I'm thinking she's a software engineer or IT, or she does coding. Coding's her thing. And she's really trying to get her business up and running. And she's also the perfect heroine during times of pandemics because she's happily stay at home and not go anywhere. So she would have come out of 2021 into 2022 and nothing much would have really changed in her life because she's quite happy being an introvert and doing her own thing. And so she's such a sweet character. Yeah. So I really liked Annabelle. So she's doing her own thing at home and all the rest of it and working at home. And then she reconnects with a friend who happens to be engaged to the guy whose best friend was the guy she knew from college. And so in college, they'd been really, really good friends, and that had moved into romance territory. And he had proposed to her. And of course, she's the one who broke it off. And because they were young, and I mean, for all the really sensible reasons, I think young people will break off relationships as well. It's like, am I too young? Is he really the right one? Parents are like, oh, we're not sure if you should do this, and for all those types of things. And so they split, but she's never forgotten about him, and she keeps the photo. There's this photo they have that she managed to get hold of, a professional photo that someone had taken of them, and she uses that as her wallpaper on her computer. So she hasn't forgotten him. And then he has been in Germany and working over there, and he hasn't forgotten her either. So it's just, I love it when you have these people that they still have feelings for each other, but there's all this emotion about, it's just too painful for me to let them know that I still care, and I've been rejected once, I can't bear to be rejected again. And the scene that I love the ski trip in this book. It's just hilarious. I loved how that panned out, and the best laid plans don't necessarily work the way you think. And then Valentine's also does feature in the story, because we have towards the end, Valentine's Day appears. I won't say anything else because I'm not going to give away the story. But if you're looking for a really nice, feel-good, fun Valentine's Day story, I recommend Operation Valentine.
I need to reread it. I knew that it was about Valentine's Day, and I love Beth's books, but I was pretty sure you were going to bring it up. So, but yeah, I think I need to go back and find that one again. It's on my Kindle somewhere.
Yes. Yay. I loved writing that one. I like my little Operation novellas are near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
They are adorable.
Yes.
In the best way.
What you got, Valerie?
What have I got? When you were talking about one of the characters needs to like really be against romance, one of the things that I thought about quickly was Forget Paris by Autumn Macarthur.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the heroine there, her name is Zoe, and she's in Paris on Valentine's Day alone, which is how she'd like it. Thank you very much. And she's there actually to prove that love or that romance is an illusion. So she meets this guy, Gabe. He's there to place a love lock on a bridge, as they do in Paris, which I had never heard of before her book. But I now know that it's happens in other places as well. And I have seen it in other places as well, but I've never been to Paris, so I haven't seen it there. Anyways, she's like, oh, isn't that sweet? You know, his mother has passed away and he's here to do this. Was her wish. She'd always wanted to come to Paris, and because their love was so true, and she's like, great, nice for you, and all that. But anyways, they spend the day together. They just kind of hit it off, and then she has decided kind of impulsively to do a psychological experiment and prove that romance isn't real. And he kind of thinks she's cute. And he's not quite so convinced that romance cannot be real. So he goes along with it. And that's really where the story begins. You guys have read it.
Yeah,
it's been around for a few years, and we all love Autumn's books.
Yeah.
That's a classic in my mind.
I agree.
Yeah, and it starts on Valentine's Day.
Such a good book. If you have not read that, rectify that situation immediately. It's really such a fun book. Such a fun book. Good choice.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go first with Secretly Yours by Valerie Comer. You might have heard of her. It is the first of her Riverbend novellas. So it's a little older, and we've talked about some of the Riverbends, possibly even this one, but I can't remember. But Lindsay is catering the church's Valentine's Day dinner. She's a chef, and to help her sister out. And turns out that the youth pastor, who's, sort of in charge of this dinner from the church end, is the high school bad boy who she wants nothing to do with at all. So it's a really fun, not enemies. I'd say it's more opposites than anything, although maybe a little bit of enemies in there.
Yeah, there's some enemies in
there. There's some enemies in there. And, you know, because she's the caterer and he's in charge of the function, it's not like they cannot deal with each other. They have to. And I just really I love this story. It's just fun. And I don't feel like I can say much more without giving away too much because it is shorter. So there's not as much, you know, there's no fluff to talk about. Just get into the story. But it's really fun. And another one that I feel like if you haven't read, you should rectify that immediately.
Thank you. That whole series was a lot of fun. I revisited them recently. There's 5 stories, one for winter, which is this one, Secretly Yours, and then spring, summer, fall, and Christmas ones. And I reread them this past year. It's been a few since they came out, and I was like, oh, I remember you guys. You were so fun.
They're all so good. I was about to say that Merry Kisses I thought was my favorite, but then I started thinking of the other ones and I can't choose a favorite. So no, I'm not going to.
Well, thank you.
All right, Narelle, what's your next one?
Well, all my books keep getting already talked about, but I'm just going to add on to Secretly Yours. I mean, Forget Paris is on my list, but I have spoken about Forget Paris in numerous episodes. So I'm going to not go down another fangirling Ocean Macarthur moment. I'll skip that. I'll go to Valerie Comer instead.
We noticed you skipping that.
Yeah.
But we'll go back to Valerie Comer and Secretly Yours. And I think what I really loved about this book is that Lindsay, she didn't want to go back to her hometown, and she went back. And I think it was because her stepmom passed away and she has a stepsister or something. I know there was someone died, I think.
Her mother died.
It was her mother, was it? Okay,
her mother
sorry.
passed away. Yeah,
her mother
leaving
passed
her
away.
Stepsister with the stepfather.
See, I'm getting myself confused already. So she needed to come home. So she came back for a really emotional reason, and she's got this younger sister, and so she's come back at a really hard time, because when someone dies, that's a really emotional sort of time to have to do anything that's different. Yeah. So she's now having to walk through this, not having her parent in her life now as well. And not only that, is that the guy who's the youth pastor was the bad boy who was terrible when he was younger, and that she'd had history with as well. And so at the same time as she's dealing with grief and those types of things, she's also got to deal with her preconceived ideas about Nick. And how did he end up going from being that person over there to being the cool youth pastor over here? And so I really love that dynamic in the story.
And then there was the teenage sister, Madison. She was so much fun.
Yes.
Because teenagers are always fun if they're in a story.
Yes.
And not your own sassy ones.
Yeah, if you don't have to parent.
Yes. So there was lots of depth, and that's what I mean. And often people will talk about novellas as being short, fun, feel good, but this particular novella it's for a short book, has got a lot of depth in it. And that's one of the reasons I love it. That's
true of all of the river bends. None of them are fluffy. None of them are fluffy.
Thank you.
I don't think.
I mean, not that fluffy's bad.
I was going to say fluffy's not pejorative, but in this case, they're not fluffy at all.
Yeah.
What's your next one, Valerie?
I have recently read the Valentine verse by Joann Durgin, and the hero believes in true love. The heroine does not. The hero's grandmother has recently had a stroke, and it's just the two of them in the world together. And the heroine is the speech pathologist who comes to the house to work with grandma. So they're pushed into each other's company quite a lot, and he's quite okay with that, because not only does he believe in true love, he kind of wonders if he might be experiencing it. And she is quite convinced that it does not exist. And as I recall, this is niggling in it's not been that long since I read the book. So anyways, but I think that she had a bad breakup on a previous Valentine's Day. So she's like just with the whole Valentine's Day thing. But the town is having this big Valentine's ball that the library is putting on, and it's a good cause and all this stuff. And she gets sucked into the whole thing. And Yeah, well, of course, we all know how that's going to end, right? Because Valentine's Day.
Exactly. If being a romance novel wasn't enough, being a Valentine's Day romance novel, for
Exactly.
sure.
And
clinches
with
it.
the word Valentine in the title, there you go. Yeah, so the guy he's very interesting in that. He's poetic and charming and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. My next one is The Cupcake Dilemma by Jennifer Rodewald. And this one's from 2018. So it's older. And I read it in 2018. So the memory is sketchy. I remember basically what it's about and that I enjoyed it. So there is a first year teacher. And she gets tasked with making cupcakes for a Valentine's Day thing at school. And it's not just her class. There's some sort, it's like town, it's in a small town, and it's a big deal for the town that these cupcakes are part of this Valentine's Day thing. What that thing is lost in time. So, and I didn't have time to go skim back through it, sadly, sorry. But she's a disaster in the kitchen. Like, this is a known thing for her, is that the kitchen, she just needs to not, like, she lives in the microwave. That's all she ever uses for anything that she prepares for her own meals, is the microwave. She either eats out or it has to be microwavable. So now she has to
It's a sad world.
It is. But now she has to make hundreds of cupcakes, and she's like, she stores stuff in her oven, if I recall. And there's like this humorous moment of having forgotten to empty the oven prior to preheating it. So yeah, so it's funny and a quick read. And I don't remember honestly too much about the hero, but I remember him being a really good opposite to her. But like I said, it's been a couple years, and I only remember that. I just really remember enjoying it a lot.
I remember enjoying it as well. And it was somewhere on my list as
Okay.
well, because I was like, wait a minute, wasn't there that story about, but I also didn't go back and look up the details, because I thought enough things to talk about without going there. But yeah, Jennifer's got some really, really good stories.
Yeah.
And someone has
that's
talked
the first
about
one that I loved.
Yeah, and someone has talked about this book on the podcast, because now you've reminded me of the book I couldn't remember that I knew related to Valentine's. One of our guests, one of our Inspy Romance authors, I'm sure.
Tony.
I think Tony Shiloh.
I'm fairly certain
Yes.
Tony Shiloh is who recommended it to me back in 2018. She either did a blog post about it or in conversation it came up. But I'm fairly certain it's Tony.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking it was. I'm listening to you talking about, thinking someone's spoken about this, and it's not you, it's not us. So it's in a previous episode. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Narelle, do you have another one?
Well, I'm just going to mention very quickly A Love Song for Kayla by Kimberly Rose Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I'm not going to go into details on it, because I have spoken about this book multiple times. And if you go back and look at our January podcast episodes and look at the one that's on winter, I talked about Valentine's books there. So I'm not going to repeat what I said last month, because that would be like boring. But anyway, I love it. And I talked about Forget Paris, I think, in that episode as well. Yeah. So, but A Love Song for Kayla is such a fun story, and she hates Valentine's Day, and she's a florist. It's just,
right?
Yeah.
She's a florist who hates Valentine's Day, which I think is super fun. When as a florist, Valentine's Day is kind of important to your bottom line. So
kind of your money.
Yes. So that's a good one to reread, and I will reread that again at some point in time. And we won't talk about how long my reread list and my need to read list is, and my to be read list, and whatever other list I have.
all of them.
Yes.
Valerie, what about you? Do you have another one?
I do have another one. It's Valentine's Wish by Betsy Amant.
Okay.
And it's, again, an older one. But when I was digging around and looking for Valentine's stories, I was like, oh, I remember that one. I really, really liked it. I liked a lot of Betsy's older ones. And so it was fun last summer when we got to read the taco truck one, Tacos for Two. Is that what it was?
For two.
Yep.
Yep.
Anyway, so A Valentine's Wish, there's a youth pastor. His name is Andy. And he needs to find a wife because the church thinks he should, and the little old ladies in the church think he should and stuff. But there's really only one person that he would be interested in, and she friend zoned him a very long time ago. So this is a very big problem, and she has since then dated someone else and been recently jilted by that someone else. So she's in a fragile place, and he's trying very hard to just be a good friend, but hello, he would like to be more than a friend. So he decides to be her secret admirer and do all this stuff leading up to Valentine's Day, when he has this big reveal planned, which of course does not go according to his plan. So
Probably
that's
not,
where
yeah.
we'll leave
That sounds fun. I haven't read that one.
does.
That sounds really cute.
And her
Or if I've read it,
stories,
I've forgotten about it.
her stories take place, a lot of them in like Louisiana and stuff, so it doesn't have that whole snow
Sure.
thing that
It's
that
warmer.
Secretly Yours does.
Was that a love-inspired book? Was it a love-inspired one?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
cool.
I really like the Secret Admirer ones with Valentines. I think that's just so fun.
Which actually is a really good segue into my next one,
All right.
which is
Good.
Paper Hearts. Paper Hearts
By
by
Courtney
Courtney Walsh.
Walsh.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, an older one, but Abigail has this business that's being threatened by the landlord, who is a doctor who wants to take over her space to make his practice bigger. And the town has this group of ladies called the Valentine Volunteers, who are matchmakers. And every year they try to matchmake one couple. And Abigail doesn't want to be part of that. So they sort of draft her to be in the group instead. And also what they do is people send these paper hearts, anonymous notes to one another, to love notes, as part of the Valentine's Day celebration. There's something about the town name that makes it's like Lover's Gulch or something, that makes it sort of like, North Pole, Alaska, people send all their Santa stuff. This is
Right.
something Valentine's-y, so that everyone from around the US sends Valentine's-y love note things into. And so she takes these paper hearts and makes them part of her store decorations for the season. And it's just kind of fun how the hero is a widower, I believe.
That sounds right. It's been a while since I read it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe he's a widower. And the two of them have some antagonistic history, not romantic, but I can't remember exactly what the antagonistic history is.
We can't
between them.
remember this story, but go read it.
Well, I remember it being very fun. And
Yeah.
honestly, the cover will want to make you read it, just
Yeah.
because the cover is adorable. That is initially why I read it. I think this was the first book by Courtney Walsh that I ever read. And I think I bought
Mine
it
too, I think.
primarily because the cover was just so stinking cute. So
Yeah.
it's a fun, very Valentine's Day themed book.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a good one. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all of mine. Do either of you have more?
I'm done.
You
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. So since we are having Valentine's Day on Monday, I do not want to forget to remind you that if you're not a regular blog reader at inspyromance.com, in addition to the podcast, starting on Monday, it would be fun for you to start being a regular blog reader and commenter, because we'll be kicking off our number 8th?
I believe 8th. Yeah.
8th
Yep.
annual birthday bash celebration. So this is 8 years ago. We started the Inspi Romance blog with a cache of Christian romance authors Some of us have been around since the beginning. Some of us are new. Some people come and go and then come back. And but it's fun. I like the fact that it's not always necessarily the same group of us there. Which sounds bad. I don't ever want anyone to leave. I'm not saying there was anyone I was like, good riddance and don't let no, that didn't happen. I like that there's sometimes we get some new authors in too. That's what I'm trying to say. It was meant to be positive. But anyway, the birthday bash is kicking off and we have some really fun prizes. Paperbacks, ebooks, and then tote bags and notepads and pens. And the grand prize this year has a Kindle Paperwhite as part of it as well. So come read the blog. Monday, you'll get to see what all the prizes are. And then every post between the 14th, so Valentine's Day, and I think it's March 18th is when we get through the whole rotation.
16th, maybe
16th.
Something like that, though.
Somewhere in the middle of March.
Yep.
Every comment on every blog post is an entry into the giveaways. And so then we just give away a whole bunch of cool books. So you don't want to miss it.
And one of the really cool things is that we always have 1 or 2 international prizes for paperbacks as well. So if you live outside of the US, then you will want to make sure we know that when you comment. Yeah. So that we can enter you into the international paperback giveaways.
I will caveat that we use Book Depository for those international giveaways. So if because of stupid COVID that continues to be annoying, check out Book Depository. If they're not I think they're still not delivering to most of South America right now, which is ridiculous.
And there's random countries here and there, I think.
Yes. So as much as I
true.
want to say, I love that we're sending to things internationally, some countries are not able to be sent to just because we're using Book Depository so that we're not spending, $150 on shipping to get it to you.
But it will go to Australia and New Zealand and the UK and
Canada. I think most of the dog's leaving, in case you were wondering. Most of the continent, the European continent, I think is still fine. So I really think it's just a few countries in South America.
Seems like I heard about something else recently, but
South Africa, I think, is one that is tricky with the Book Depository.
I think so. So, but check it out and see. It's very easy to find what countries they have it listed. But if you're not on there, we won't deliver their list. We'd love to have you possibly win one of our international prizes. And then hopefully you'll find our blog so fun that you'll stick around and listen to the podcasts and comment on the blogs. So leave us a comment with your Valentine's Day reads CCR that we missed, because I'm sure they're out there. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining us at Story Chats. Let us know your thoughts. I already said that. You can find all the information you need about the podcast at inspyromance.com/storychats. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we will look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.